Good afternoon and welcome to RPG Storytelling. Today is Friday, January 29th, 2021, and we've been on a break for about a week. Mental health issues took priority for our last two sessions, but we're back now and we've got a lot of fun things to cover today. But first, I want to go through a couple of announcements really quickly. I am currently working on two things for y'all. The first being all of these wonderful Twitch live streams that I've been doing for you. I'm working on actually converting them to actual video on demand so I can upload them to YouTube. So as soon as I get that figured out and all the videos that I've got so far uploaded for you, I will let you know where to find me on YouTube. And then, as an addition to that, I'm also currently working on a full website for RPG storytelling. So we're going to have a great place to store all of the grain prompts that we've put out. I'll have blog articles on there, different templates and things that you can download. As of right now, they're all going to be free of charge, so I'm not worried about charging anything yet. May change that someday down the road if I get lots of popularity, but for now it's going to be all free, so you can download those, and it'll give you a great way to, specifically for the templates, it'll give you a great way to have a template of how to create your character backstories, or how you can possibly create your character backstories, so that you can find pertinent information that's just for your character. So, but that'll be coming. I'm hoping to get the website up by March 1st, but I'll let you know as soon as we get closer to that. So as of right now, we've got the YouTube in the works and the website in the works. Both of those coming soon, hopefully. And then, since we missed last Tuesday because of all mental health issues, had to take some self-care. Always make sure you take self-care, especially during all this COVID stuff. Got to make sure you're taking care of yourself. So since we missed the movie last week, I'm moving it to this Tuesday instead. We're going to be watching the second movie starring Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner, and Danny DeVito. The last one was Romancing the Stone. This Tuesday, we're going to be watching The Jewel of the Nile, which came out in 1985. It's a great, fun little movie. I believe Omar Sharif is also in the movie, if I'm remembering the actor correctly. But I hope you'll come and join us. It's a great way just to get out of your own head for a while. Come join us for the movie. Stay for the friendship. We'll have plenty of conversation. If we get people there, there'll be conversation anyways. But we'll talk about whatever we want to. Maybe do like a Mystery Science Theater 3000-esque commentary on the movie as we watch. Who knows? We'll just come up with it as we need to. Then on Wednesday, as with every Wednesday, I would invite you to hop on over to twitch.tv/HP2XP for the continuing adventures in Umbranthal, starring myself as Anara. And then we've got six other players. Rice, or the characters' names are Rice, Verona, Aziris, Cloud, Maple, and Fen. The player playing Verona has to take a break for a little bit just because of work-related issues. But they'll be back eventually, I'm sure of that. So come over to the HB2XP channel here on Twitch. I've got them linked down in my recommended streamers. That's every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We've got a lot of fun planned. We've got, I believe that this next episode is going to be episode number 7, session 7. And in case you missed it, you can hop over to the HP2XP Twitch channel or their YouTube channel and find out what happened in our last episode. There was a lot of big changes in our last episode, so hope you'll tune in for that and have some fun with us. All right, so without further ado, let's jump right into the grain prompts that we have for today. So basically, this entire Grain Prompts Live is dedicated to exploring and diving deep into different topics that you can use to help build your character's backstory. The actual character creation process, that's game specific and very mechanical as far as what you can do with it and whatever. But your backstory is something that is specific just to your character. So I do these grain prompt lives, or let me see if I can spit this all out properly. I do grain prompts once or twice a week, and then almost every Friday, except for the first Friday of every month, I do a grain prompts live, which does a deep dive into those grain prompts. So without further ado, let's jump into today's. The first one I'm going to talk about today is all about magic. For characters that use magic within the various game systems, I like to refer specifically to Dungeons & Dragons just because that's the one I'm most familiar with. But I invite any feedback from y'all as far as what different game systems you think we can include in these. But within the fantasy type genre, which includes Dungeons & Dragons, and I believe Warhammer as well, different characters have the ability to cast magic or do spell casting. For the purposes of this prompt, within the simple beginnings category, you want to look back to your character's very, very first spell that they ever cast. This can either be the very first spell that they cast in-game or the very first spell that they cast in their backstory. So it's up to you which direction you want to go with it. But it's not just what spell did they cast, it's how did it make your character feel? How did they react to it? So that's what we're going to explore with this first prompt today. For level 1 characters, it might seem, well, for some of them anyways, it might seem like a real surprise when they are actually able to get a spell to work. I know that with my current character, Anara, who I play on Wednesday nights during the Umbranthal series, she's a rogue, but when she reached level 3, she became an arcane trickster rogue, which kind of gave access to magic for her, even though in her backstory, she was actually studying to be a wizard. So it kind of plays into how she came into access of these magical spells and rituals and everything. So I'll talk about Anara because she's near and dear to my heart, obviously. With Anara being an arcane trickster rogue and having studied for the previous 10, 15 years to be a wizard within the Drow Society, she was familiar with magic. She'd been studying magic and working with magic. I like to think that even though she didn't really use it at all during levels 1 and 2 because she couldn't because of the class subclass structure, she had probably used like Mage Hand and things like that. Really, really simple spells. But the first actual real usable spell that she was able to cast was after she reached level 3, was the Find Familiar spell. It kind of works as a ritual, but the way the Arcane Trickster subclass is used, she's actually able to get one spell that's not an enchantment or an illusion spell. So having access to that Find Familiar spell and having it actually work was a huge, exciting thing for her. She had seen her mentor back in her hometown do the spell plenty because they had their own familiar, and she'd practiced it plenty of times. But the first time she actually got it to work was in the game. as a level 3 arcane trickster rogue. So it was a huge success for her. She was really excited for it. She'd seen her mentor do plenty of things with their find familiar, so she wanted to maybe do some of the same things with hers. And for those that haven't seen the show yet, her familiar that she's come up with so far is a great horned owl. It's mostly black feathering with purple trailing feathers at the edges, lavender circles around the eyes, and antlers on her head. It's really absolutely adorable. But so she was really excited to create this spell and have it work. So she's really into magic. She loves magic, but she's also a rogue at the same time. So she uses the magic as an addition to her swordplay, which we'll get into swords and bladed weapons in a minute. It's actually our second prompt for today. But for level 1 type characters, or characters that are just coming into their magic, look at how they actually came into that magic. Was the spell a product of years of study, like it was for Anara being a student of wizardry? Or was it possibly like a divine gift from some kind of deity, like for paladins and clerics? Or maybe on the flip side of the deity magic for paladins and clerics, maybe your character came into their magic through a not so fun turn of events, having some kind of deal with a demon or a fiend or undead or whatever. And that would be for like the warlocks who get their magic from that kind of entity. But wherever the magic came from, how did your character realize that they were actually able to cast that magic in the first place? Look at I'm gonna use the character of Ford from Critical Role. Session 1, he's recovering from being cast overboard off of a ship and finding somehow attached to him this magical sword that is a boon from a deity of some sort, an evil type deity called Ukatoa. So he was frightened by it. He was excited by it, and it came out in game that it was just there. He didn't really make a pact with this demon at all, or entity, because I don't know if Ukatoa is an actual demon or a god or whatever, but this entity just literally gave it to him for some nefarious purposes. So even warlocks don't necessarily have to make that deal. It's just sometimes it just happens to them. So looking further into your character's magical abilities, how did they react when they realized that magic was going to be a powerful presence in their life? What was their first reaction to it? For Anara, she was extremely excited that her Find Familiar spell actually worked. For Ford, he was a little nervous and not sure what to do with it. So it can go many different ways as far as how they react to it. Was the magic that they came into a product of their community or their upbringing? Like Anara, she was raised as, well, I don't want to give away too much of her backstory, but magic was a part of her life by going to school for it. She was training to be a wizard. For druids, perhaps, like the character Keyleth from Critical Role, she was a druid her whole life. Her entire existence revolved around the usage of nature magic, or magic that is derived from nature. So it was an ingrained thing that was part of her. It was part of her culture, part of her community. But on the flip side, you can also look at how would your character react if magic was outlawed within that community or that civilization, and all of a sudden your character has that magic. How do they react? How do they deal with it? Do they try to hide it and not use it at all, or do they secretly practice their trade and practice their spellcraft, or do they run away or get away from that civilization and try to explore and enhance their magical abilities? So in this one, you would kind of look at, what is the civilization that my character came from? What is the culture like within that civilization? And how is magic looked at within that culture and civilization? That'll kind of give you some clues as to how your character feels about their magic and how they feel about the fact that it's definitely a part of their lives, whether they like it or not. They don't necessarily have to use the magic, but it's there regardless. So like if a warlock came into their magic completely unknowingly, and they were raised in a devout, good religious organization that frowned upon the use of magic, especially demonic type magic, how would your character react to this possibly nefarious origin of their magic in relation to being a good aligned religion type person? So there's a lot of ways you can definitely look at it. Sometimes the magic is just part of their DNA, and there's not really anything you can do about it, such as sorcerers within Dungeons & Dragons. It's just like an innate ability that they have. It didn't come from any deities, didn't come from any demons. There wasn't any pacts or bargains made or anything. It was just, that's part of their blood. That's who they are. So you kind of have to look at these things and look at how these different origins of their magic make your character feel, how they react to having that magic. But regardless of where the magic came from or how they reacted to it, the ultimate goal is to uncover how your character felt and reacted when they cast their very first spell. So that very first spell is the key to understanding your character. Higher level spells, when you get there and learning more magic after that first spell, they're just learning more about their craft. But that first one is the important one, because it shows what your character thinks about magic and how they feel about it. So I encourage you to look into these different things and try to explore if it's a tool that is a great thing for your character, or if it's some kind of curse that if they use it, it's eating away at their soul. Try to figure these things out and have fun with it. But next, we're actually going to kind of switch gears slightly and move into weapons. This time also looking at the very first time a weapon was used, or when a weapon was finally decided upon as being like the preferred weapon. Throughout history, okay, let me back up a step. Within human society, within our own realm, some of the earliest prehistoric tools that were ever developed were stone weapons, spears, knives, and axes, things that were meant to be used as a tool for like chopping. Let's see if I can talk. For cutting wood, for skinning animals, for gutting fish, different things like that. But it was also used to hunt for that food. So like a spear or an axe or a bladed weapon used to hunt mammoths or other animals within the area. Then you've also got these same tools being used as weapons, both for defense of the person, defense for the community, but also as tools for war. These are tools that developed vastly over the thousands and thousands of years since humans have been using these tools, from stone to iron and copper and bronze and now to steel and upwards of different types of metals that are being used for these various weapons. So for this one, you want to look at why did your character come into using a bladed weapon, if they use bladed weapons, and how they first came into using them. As you've already heard me say, some of the weapons that we're going to talk about are like daggers, swords, axes, spears, javelins, and all the other types of bladed type weapons that characters possibly could use. I'd like to look at the fact that, yes, weapons can do a lot of damage, sometimes horrifically so, but in learning how to use these weapons, both in our world and in game worlds, it's a matter of learning how to finesse the weapon, how to use the weapon properly so that it's not a danger to your character, but possibly a big danger to those that are used against. So there's a lot of acrobatics and artistry and skill that goes into using these weapons. So you want to look at how your character was first introduced to this bladed weapon. Within game worlds, your character will typically focus on one or two weapons primarily. I know with Anara, since that's my character, she prefers a rapier. That's her primary weapon, but she's also got a couple daggers as well that she keeps on her leg for just in case moments, or when she just doesn't want to get too close to the enemy. But focusing on the specific weapon that your character uses primarily, you can start to look at where did this weapon come from? How do they come into their preference for this type of weapon? For Anara, she liked the artistry. She liked the skill. She liked the, as was kind of explained a bit in the books and series, TV series of Game of Thrones. It's kind of a dance. With rapiers, it's more of a dance, more fencing style, versus just arm over hand or over the shoulder slicing. It's more than just brute strength trying to kill something. It uses both defense, it uses offense, it uses dancing type techniques to move the weapon and to finesse it so that it's in the right place at the right time. But for those great swords and great axes where strength is the primary characteristic of being able to use it, it's not so much about defense, it's more straight offense. You're just going in for the kill. You're trying to do as much damage as possible. Whereas with like daggers and rapiers and such, you're finessing the line between offense and defense to try to get a good balance between the two. So let's see, we'll move on to the next part. Then you have to look at, why did your character take up a life of the sword to begin with? Was it a fact that they don't have any magic available to them and they needed a way to defend themselves? Or was it were they part of a hunting tribe where spears and axes and swords and things were a primary tool for hunting, for killing dangers that might encroach on the civilization? Or were they like a soldier and the sword or weapon of choice was part of their assigned gear, where they were given this weapon, taught how to use it, and sent out into war to actually use it? Or were they possibly like an assassin or some kind of secret, hidden in the shadows type character? Typical rogues. They might have used like daggers or short swords or rapiers or possibly long swords, depending on the character choices, to kill in secret. They were get in, get out, leave no hint that you were even there, but do the damage as quickly as possible. Or possibly, maybe you do have a magical character and their primary weapon is their magic, such as warlocks or wizards or sorcerers or even druids. A secondary weapon could be a dagger or a sword of some sort, so just in case during a combat scenario, perhaps they happen to use up all their spells, and they have nothing left. Having that sword at their side as a possible secondary weapon will allow them to keep hitting, even if they might not have normal proficiency in those weapons. So I like to think of this as, if you all are familiar with Lord of the Rings, Gandalf the wizard, his primary weapon was all of his magic and his greatstaff. Those were his primary weapons. But he also had a longsword as well that he used as a secondary weapon when magic just wasn't the right tool. So these are all things that you can look at when you're exploring your character and their usage of bladed weapons. While this prompt tries to focus on first level or pre-first level characters, you can look at this at any point within your character's lineage as far as growing into their adventurehood, and looking back and trying to understand why they like these weapons so much. What is their primary focus as far as why they want the weapons, how they learned how to use the weapons, and how they feel about their weapons. So that's the one thing I want you to look at is how do your characters feel about the weapons that they use, and how do they feel about using that weapon against opponents? So, like I said, bladed weapons can be used for either offense or defense. If they're primarily for offense, how does your character feel about doing that damage? How do they feel about killing? How do they feel about going at the front of the battle and trying to do as much damage as they can? Conversely, if their weapon is more for defense, how do they feel about their skills as far as being able to defend themselves? How do they feel about being able to block different strikes and different slashes and piercing maneuvers? How do they feel about being able to use that defense and then also flip it into an offense to do damage at the same time? So it's all about how your character feels about using their weapon and why they chose to use this particular weapon. So that takes care of our weapons and our magic. The next one is kind of a fun little one that it not necessarily has anything to do with what you need to tell your dungeon master or game master or whoever's leading your game. Similar to these are all just background information for you about your character. The next one we're going to talk about is kind of delving in a little bit of mythology, but only briefly. So let me read through this real quick, just so you don't have to struggle to see it if you can't see it. According to ancient Greek mythology, the god Zeus gifted a box to a woman named Pandora and told her to never open it. But like most people, curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to open the box. But upon opening that box, she unfortunately released into the world all of the evils that we now know. Malice, hatred, anger, war, basically any evil you can think of was released from this box. seeing what she was, what had happened when she opened this box, she tried her best to close it. Unfortunately, there was all of the evils had already escaped, but one thing did remain in the box, and that was hope. Hope is what remained in the box. So that's Pandora's story. For this one, I like to, it's basically all theoretical and hypothetical. What if your character had been given that box and the curiosity got the better of him and everything escaped except for one thing? What would be that one thing left in the box for your character? For good aligned characters, there are tons of choices. I list a few here in this prompt, such as hope, or like for Pandora, charity or love, which are essentially the same thing. Forgiveness, happiness, tranquility, passion, peacefulness, serenity, many different good type of emotions or feelings or things could be left in the box. But if you want to play a little game of opposites, perhaps everything got released from the box except for maybe one evil thing for your good aligned character. And this is an item that's permanently trapped in the box, and they were just so lucky to keep it in the box. Could be things like anger or malice or the darker side of passions. So understanding what your character holds on to can help you to better portray them during roleplay. What is the one thing that your character holds most dear in their heart as being the ideal of what needs to embody your character? Similarly, for evil-aligned characters, there are just as many possibilities. And the funny thing is, you can have all of the evil or you can have all the good that's escaped into the world, and your evil character is trying to conquer the good. Or perhaps they, just like Pandora, they released all the evil and almost all the good, but one specific good-aligned ideal is trapped in the box. It's completely up to you and your character as far as what gets left in the box. So once again, it's looking at what does your character hold as the ideal of what they would love to have stay in the box. This is all extremely fun to look at, especially if you have a character that's of one alignment and the thing in the box is the opposite alignment, or could be viewed as an opposite alignment type item. So have fun looking at these ones, play around with the different scenarios for what might be important to your character, and enjoy trying to discover what your character holds as their ideal. So I'm not going to go too much longer, but I just want to thank you all for coming to join me today. We've got a whole lot of fun planned next week and next month. One thing I did forget to say in my announcements at the beginning is for all of February, so starting this very next week, all of my grain prompts are going to be for NPCs or non-player characters. So just like players need all the help we can get for helping to build and develop our character backstories, sometimes the dungeon master or the game master or lore keeper or whoever's leading your game needs help developing interesting and sometimes complex backstories for the many, many characters that they deal with throughout their one game, let alone if they're running several games. So it's this next month we're going to try to do various NPC or non-player character related grain prompts to help our dungeon masters as well, so that they can build characters that are going to torment our fun-loving characters. So anyways, I hope you'll keep tuning in. So once again, Tuesday, we're going to be watching The Jewel of the Nile, 6 p.m. Right here on this Twitch channel. Wednesday, hop on over to twitch.tv/HP2XP at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific for the continuing adventures in Umbranthal. And then next Friday, since it'll be the first Friday of February, we will be doing an interview with my wife about her experiences with designing characters and creating character backstories within the many different game systems that she has had the pleasure and privilege of playing in. She's been playing for roughly about 15 to 20 years, so she's got a few years of experience versus me, who's been playing for just over a year. So anyways, I hope you'll tune in to our show next Friday for our live Q&A with Dr. Wyvern, aka my wife Amy, and we will see you then. So until next time, have a great weekend, and make sure you wear masks, social distance, wash your hands, stay safe, try to do everything you can to keep yourself healthy, and if you're able to, get the vaccine, please. We need as much help as we can get to kill off this coronavirus. So until next time, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.